When it comes to data and digital acceleration, companies are facing significant challenges. My co-host Sarah and I are here to help you tackle them. We're broadcasting live from SAP Now in Brussels, and in today's episode of SAP BeLux Talks, we'll talk to Timo Elliott. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, Timo, you used to be a data analyst, but now you're an SAP evangelist. In other words, on behalf of SAP, you give talks in which you really look forward to the future and you set out a vision about technology. But I saw on your blog recently that you cooked your first AI-powered meal by asking ChatGPT what and how to cook. What did you learn from this experiment?
So the key was the experimentation. So I am a terrible cook, and AI brings the biggest benefits to the least qualified people. So when it comes to cooking, I'm absolutely that person. And I found even with cooking books, it made a lot of assumptions about things that I was supposed to understand that I didn't, like measuring sizes and things. And the good thing about AI is there are no dumb questions. I was able to do it without having a human being judge me as I was trying to cook badly. But the bigger thing is, in order to get good at AI, you have to experiment. You have to try new ways of doing things. I think a lot of people tried out the first versions and didn't find it very useful. And they're like, okay, well, I'll come back to that later. I'm here to tell you that now is the time to come back to it. You have to spend some time understanding how to do the prompts properly, but everybody should take the plunge, should jump in and figure out how they could do part of their life, part of their work using these great new technologies. I think AI can stand for adaptation imperative. I think all of us need to figure out how to integrate AI, this next big wave of computing, into everything we do.
How did it work, the experiment? Did you just ask ChatGPT, what can I cook? Or did you list some ingredients? You said prompting is important?
Yeah, I think it was like I opened the fridge and like, okay, what can I make? What do I have? And then it was just a whole series of questions about, well, hold on, how do I do that? And what else do I need? And I think I asked, give me a shopping list. What is it I need in order to do that meal? What are the herbs and things I needed?
Yeah, so we can use AI to optimize our cooking skills. But if we want to use AI in companies, we'll need to have good and structured data. You used to be a data analyst. What are the main challenges for organizations when it comes to their data assets?
So I talk to a lot of organizations about their innovation projects, and I often ask them, what's the number one thing you would have done differently second time around? What did you learn? And they all say roughly the same thing. They would have spent more time integrating and improving their data before they got started. It ended up taking far more resources than they realized it was going to take. Most organizations have terrible data quality. And of course, when it comes to AI, data quality is even more important. There's already a problem of hallucinations, garbage in, garbage out. So I find that most organizations who want to take a big step forward with new technologies like AI first have to take a small step backwards and fix their data infrastructure, their data plumbing. From an SAP point of view, of course, we're spending a lot of time trying to help organizations with that, with technologies like SAP DataSphere. It's what we call a business data fabric solution, where you can bring together data from inside and outside your organization to get a single view across all of that without actually having to physically bring all of the data into one place. So it's more of a connect rather than collect approach. And then we've got some new technologies such as the SAP Knowledge Graph and the vector engine in SAP HANA. We don't have time to go into all the technical details, but these are the kinds of technologies that are absolutely essential to ground these latest generative AI technologies so that you have the real information in real time from your systems when it's generating the answers. And then ultimately, I think AI will be a big help in actually preventing data problems in the future. Now, poor data quality is not a technical problem. It's a reflection of broken business processes. And AI will be able to help improve those processes. And I think the whole thing will get accelerated and will get faster and faster and better and better.
Yeah, but because when it comes to AI, are we still in the experimental phase, or do you already see actual impact as well?
So both. Gartner says we've just gone over the peak of the inflated expectations, the top of the hype cycle, and we're now heading down into the trough of disillusionment. But in general, that's a very good sign. It means that we've gone beyond the phase where we're just talking about the technology and imagining the possibilities, and it means companies are actually trying to use it in their business, and that means they're learning what does and doesn't work. So we're on the path to value. Everybody agrees that the next year, the coming year, is moving from the experimentation phase to the construction phase. The first phase has been a lot about personal productivity, using it as individuals in our jobs, and that works because you can control a lot of the variables and the potential hallucinations. The real value will come from embedding it in corporate processes, which so a lot more value, but it also requires a lot more of a strategic approach. So unsurprisingly, Gartner says they just published the top 5 list of CIOs' priorities for the coming year, and number 1 is having an AI strategy. Only around 20% of organizations today have an AI from a strategic point of view. So that was number 1. Number 2, unsurprisingly, was data and analytics. And then when you look at what is stopping people from their AI implementations, then it turns out that number 1 is older non-cloud environments. So cloud environments are very much a requisite for these latest generation of cloud technologies. So everybody should be thinking about their AI strategies, and that's not just a piece of paper. Nobody really knows the best practices yet, especially not in your industry. So it's a combination of bottom-up, a lot of enablement of people on the ground to understand what this could do to improve their processes. But it does have to have a top-down infrastructure approach. You need standards, you need governance, you need make sure that everybody is enabled. So organizations need to double down on that over the coming year.
Yeah, I think both bottom up and top down. Maybe some people think that AI will take jobs away. Is that true, or will it enhance them?
Yes.
Both.
Okay, that's a short answer.
Yes, all of the above. I actually have some figures here from IDC, from a survey I saw that I thought was interesting. So they asked a whole bunch of business people, CIOs, CFOs, and so on, and these are the results. 50% said that many employees will need to be reskilled or retrained. 48% said many employees will focus on higher value tasks. 44% said many employees will be transferred to other roles. And 12% said many positions will be eliminated. So you'll have noticed that's way more than 100%. So all of these things are happening at the same time. It's not really at the job level. It's going to be at the task level. I really strongly believe that there's part of everybody's job that is now obsolete. There's something that you just shouldn't be doing, and you should just let the algorithms do it. But there's another part of your job where you could be 10 or 100 times more effective thanks to these algorithms. The trick, of course, is figuring out which is which goes back to the experimentation. So as individuals, but also as teams, as organizations as a whole. Now, for most of the people listening to this podcast, AI will be about augmented intelligence. It's a little bit like when they created spreadsheets for the first time for finance people and accountants. So yes, there were some people who did manual data entry and shuffled numbers about. Yes, they lost their roles, but for the vast majority of accountants, it gave them a superpower. They were able to do way more than they could do in the past. So I'm sure you've already heard the phrase, you're not going to lose your job to AI, you're going to lose your job to somebody who uses AI better than you do. Mm-hmm. Again, comes back to everybody should be trying to figure out what this means to their jobs. And one of the things I find fascinating is that AI is being used a lot right now in business. It's just being used under the radar. There's a lot of shadow AI where people are using it in their jobs, but they're not telling their bosses about it. 2 big reasons. One is there's a lot of organizations that told them they're not allowed to. Especially if you're touching on your corporate data, they don't want that out. Or secondly, they're not telling the boss because they just think the boss is going to turn around and give them more work. So they're getting personal benefits, but it's not necessarily becoming a corporate return on investment. So what's key is to to make sure that you have a program in place to take these willing employees and make sure that they know that when they're allowed to do it, how they're allowed to do it, retraining, skilling, governance, make sure that there's the frameworks in place that individuals can contribute and the organization as a whole.
And how can you convince people that it's a good thing?
So, this comes back to the classics. Every time there's a new technology wave, and everybody seems to agree now that this is the third big wave. So we had the PC, then the internet. This is the third big wave. And this is why organizations are investing billions in the infrastructures to create these models. The revenue isn't there today, but they're just making a big bet that this is the technology that will make a difference over the next couple of decades. And so how do you persuade everybody to do things in the new way? Classic change management issue. You have to make sure that people are reassured that it's going to be for their own benefit, that they're accompanied, that they're going to also benefit from the technologies, not just the business. One thing I find fascinating is that one of the skills is that AI is actually really good at accelerating implementations. It's actually really good at change management. So change management, a lot of it is talking to people in their language about their specific position, about why it's to their benefit, and explaining the strategy and what's going on. And we all know that corporations don't have the time or won't spend the time to explain it right down for every individual, let alone doing it like one-on-one. But AI can do that. They're actually really good at explaining things at scale on a customized individual basis. So fed with the right informations, you can imagine a change management bot as you're rolling out, your upgrade to S/4HANA Cloud, Public Cloud Edition. You have to fit to standard, which means that you have to not do any customizations, which is going to make big changes to lots of people. I was just on the show floor this morning listening to an organization that had done that, and they said, you have to spend way more time than you expect explaining to everybody again and again why they're not going to get the customizations they want, why are you going to do it differently. And again, I think AI could actually be a huge ally in that.
How do you see the technology itself, AI, evolve in the next year?
So it's going to get smarter, faster, smaller, more multimodal and modal and cheaper.
Okay.
So basically it's going to improve in every way. Now, the industry as a whole, we're at the GPT-4 level right now, which is sort of roughly the third generation of these technologies. We're all waiting for the next one. And that, all of these organizations, from OpenAI to Meta to Google with Gemini, they've all been investing at least 10 to 25% as much, times as many resources as they did in the current generation. So nobody knows what the result of that's going to be. But one thing is clear is the AI that we're using today is by far the worst AI we will ever use. There's a quote from the CEO of OpenAI that says that, the today's systems will look ridiculously bad in the future. So it's a big question mark. We're going to find out in the next few months, but I think it's going to be impressive. The other thing, I think there's just going to be a huge increase in adoption, in particular through much better voice assistants. All of the we're going to get much better AI assistants than Siri and so on, and voice and vision is going to be important. Now, you can't see this if you're just listening to the podcast, but I just put on the Meta Ray-Ban smart glasses, and we're just going to try a little experiment here. This is a live demo. We'll see if this works.
Yeah.
So I'm wearing these glasses, and I'm just looking out in the studio here, and I will say, hey, Meta, look and tell me what you see.
I see a person sitting in front of a laptop with a microphone and possibly recording or broadcasting. There are people standing behind them, likely at an event or conference.
So, so this is literally a technology that could, for example, help blind people see. But, I can look at an agenda and it can tell me who's first on the program. This is really going to be fascinating in terms of what people get used to do. So I do think that glasses plus the phone in our pocket will become the new standard for how we interact with technology.
And now you can cook.
and I can now cook. The other big one that you'll hear a lot of is agents and agentic technology. And this is particularly important in the corporate world. This is where, I mean, for most organizations, AI will just turn up in their business processes from the organizations that they already trust with the best practices. So companies like SAP, we've been doing best practice business processes for 50 years. We're just going to insert AI into the business process where it makes sense, and our customers will just be able to use that without having to do that much extra effort. And so we've rolled that out for 130 different use cases so far. 80% of the user interaction should be covered by our Joule, our AI assistant, by the end of the year. But the agents, that's where it really starts getting interesting in use cases like supply chain and finance. And so you'll hear a lot more about agents from SAP in the coming months, especially at SAP TechEd Virtual. It's at the start of October 8th and 9th, if you're interested in joining.
If you had to explain it to a 5-year-old, what is an agent and what is it different than a virtual assistant?
So the big difference is that you can take a series of steps, that you can trust it to do things with a little more intelligence. We're used to assistants where you ask it one thing, it gives you an answer. But this is where you give it a project to do, and it either does it itself as a series of events, or, more interestingly, it hands off each task to different experts for different things. We're actually already doing a little bit of this behind the scenes with our smart assistant, Joule, because depending on what you're asking, if you're asking to do a transaction, it has to hand off to the transaction system. If you're asking for some information about my company policy that's in a document, then it sends it out to the retrieval augmented generative AI system. And if it's analytics, then it has to go off and create a chart, run the numbers, and then figure out what the chart should look like. So, I mean, all of that, there's a whole series of steps and logic behind the scenes. And just recently, the latest version of OpenAI in particular showed that reasoning along those lines is becoming more and more powerful very quickly.
All right. Thanks a lot for your time, Timo, Elliott, and wish you good luck in the future and with your cooking skills as well.
Thank you. And I'd like to wish everybody out there the best of luck with their innovation projects and AI in general.
Thanks.
Thank you.